Good morning, Andrea. How are you?
I am well, Rochelle. How are you doing?
I am making it every day, just a little bit every day. Uh,
Yeah,
you look beautiful as always. I haven't seen you in so long.
it has been a long time.
And, and I'm so sorry I haven't been able to attend these meetings. They're too early. And I start my day at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. So at 8:30, I'm just now getting up to speed on all the things on my plate. So 8:30 is not always the best time for me. When I can, I will participate. I promise you. It's just I just haven't had time, between work and home and everything else. So please forgive me for that. But I promise you, I will catch up.
No problem at all. And I always feel like that, the most important work really takes place between those meetings,
Yeah,
and we stay in touch, we stay in touch in between the meetings. So,
absolutely. So thank you for agreeing to do this diversity chat with me. So I'm going to start with one simple question. Can you please tell us your name and tell us anything you want us to know about you that will help us get to know you?
absolutely. So my name is Ondrea Austin, spelled a little bit differently. It starts with an O, Ondrea. My parents decided, I think, just to be a little bit different. So they just wanted to be unique. So that's where that name comes from. I currently manage corporate partnerships and work-based learning for Durham Public Schools, although I'm here, just individually with my own personal perspective on things. I'm originally from San Diego, California, and made my way over to Boston for graduate school and then came down here about 9 years ago. And I am the proud mom of two fur babies. I have two little Shih Tzus who are
Oh,
my kids. So, and I apologize, they're here and I will try to keep them quiet.
worries. No worries. We've had a little bit of everything in our meeting, so no worries. What brought you from San Diego? You said San Francisco?
Diego.
San Diego. What brought you from San Diego to Durham, North Carolina?
Well, I was actually living in Northern California at the time, but going to graduate school brought me to the East Coast. I went to Brandeis University outside of Boston. And the reason that I chose to go there was I'm a return Peace Corps volunteer, and they had a big return Peace Corps volunteer population, of students at the school because they have an international development master's degree program.
Mhm.
And I actually went there for the MBA program, but I like the fact that that the MBA program was focused more on mission-driven organizations, and I did end up doing the dual master's degree with international development too. So that brought me out to the East Coast, and then when I finished graduate school, I came on down here simply because I liked the area. I liked the quality of life.
Yeah. North Carolina is beautiful. I love the trees. I am a tree hugger, but I love North Carolina. Absolutely perfect. So can you tell us a little bit about what life was like in San Diego, Northern California, this place where you got your master's, and North Carolina? Can you kind of give us a kind of an analogy of each one, what your impressions of each one of those locations were like?
Absolutely. Well, let's see. So San Diego, I actually grew up in a rural area in San Diego. A lot of people don't think of San Diego, as having that. They kind of think of the beach, the beach city. But San Diego actually has mountains, that are not too far from the beach that are right inland. So I actually grew up in the mountains in a rural area. It was about 40 minutes or so to get down to the beach from there. So it was real country living for me growing up. That was sort of my neighbors and my lifestyle. We had a hobby farm, I call it, because they were all pets. My parents basically would go to the local auction, and whichever the cutest goats were, the cutest pig they would get, and we ended up with all of them on our on our property. So I grew up a real animal lover. Yeah, I did have some of the beach culture because I went to UC San Diego for college. So that's right on the beach. Um, so that's a little bit about San Diego. As I got older, I always found it, I guess, a little isolating for me because everything's so spread out. It's a real sprawling city. To go anywhere, you have to be in your car like 30 to 50 minutes to get anywhere, and it was just hard for me to feel like a sense of community, and see people there. Northern California, I moved there actually after the Peace Corps. So I was in my early 20s when I moved to Northern California. And I actually moved up there because I wanted to find more of a sense of community and sort of a more holistic lifestyle in my perspective at the time. I was kind of looking to be have more of a hippie lifestyle at that time, or like explore, what that meant.
Yeah.
So I moved to Chico, which was a small town, and I ended up working for Girl Scouts there. So I worked with youth, and it was also very rural. Especially for my work, I would commute out to rural areas and work with the girls who were out there, getting them involved in some high school Girl Scout programs. And did you ask to hear about Boston as well, or should I just skip on down to North Carolina?
Boston and North Carolina.
Boston and North Carolina. Okay, so I mentioned, I went to graduate school in Boston, so my life really revolved around that. I lived actually in Boston, or rather Somerville, which is a community of Boston, so very urban, subway, that whole kind of lifestyle. And I would take the commuter rail out to the suburbs of Boston, where Brandeis University is located. So that was my graduate school life. Now, that was actually, I mentioned, it had an international development program, which is part of the draw for me. And so it had students from all over the world who were in the program. The program did a great job of recruiting students and professionals from developing countries and all kinds of countries. So we had a really diverse and internationally diverse student body, and I really valued that about the program. Learned a lot of things about different cultures that I never knew before. A lot of my exposure to diversity, I'll say up until that point, had been more with Latin American cultures, because I grew up in San Diego, so Mexican culture was really present, like kind of regardless of where you lived in San Diego, you were exposed to Mexican culture a lot. And then I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Costa Rica. I actually studied abroad in Spain when I was in college. So I learned Spanish, and I learned a lot about more of the Hispanic kind of culture. And so then I came down to North Carolina, and one of the something that I looked forward to, before moving down to North Carolina, because I was looking for job opportunities, and I had already been really interested in working in social justice and working with populations that I guess you could say could be viewed as like disadvantaged or like historically disadvantaged. I mean, that was the reason, that was part of the draw going into the Peace Corps, was that I wanted to actually work in, to help with poverty, to help to overcome poverty. Mm-hmm. And that was the reason that I really enjoyed working with rural communities when I worked in Northern California. So before I came down to North Carolina, I did a lot of reading about the area, and I actually came across a report that was done by MDC, which is kind of a research organization that's located in Durham. And I read a report, I think it's called Disconnected Youth or something like that, excuse me. And it talked about, the fact that 40% of youth in Durham were not on track to either graduating high school, achieving a post-secondary credential, or obtaining, gainful employment by the time that they were 25. And there was a lot of, racial ties to that because of historic racism, that led to a lot of the reasons why that was the case in Durham. Right. And that was a draw for me, because I felt like that's where, kind of where my calling was to bring my skill set and bring my passion to try to help with some of these injustices. And so I moved down to North Carolina, and I very fortunately was able, to eventually make my way into working where I am now, with Durham Public Schools. And some people kind of raise an eyebrow, like, how did you end up in public education when you studied, international development, or when your background was in poverty reduction? And something that I've always understood and see even more is that public education is exactly, an area where you can make a difference in poverty reduction, because helping to create equitable opportunities for people, is a way to overcome some of those barriers that they might have.
Excellent. So how do you and I know each other?
Excuse me.
I think I'll have some water too. Thank you. That's a good reminder.
Yeah, I've got a little dry throat there. Oh. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how we were introduced, Rochelle.
Your former boss.
Did you so you knew Rick and he introduced us? Okay. All right. So I think I just remember receiving, getting forwarded an email like, hey, this is a person who's really passionate about working with youth, specifically in increasing opportunities for minority youth. She is really plugged in, you know, to Duke University and different resources there. And so, of course, I was excited, like, yes, I want to go meet with this person. And that's how our relationship began.
The reason why I asked you that question is because I wanted to tell you about when Rick left. Rick retired and went to doing his own thing. I think he does a lot of yard work. I think he's a kind of an agricultural kind of guy now. Every time I hear something, he's talking about something he's planning or something. But when he left, one of the things I did is I wrote a letter to Rick and to his boss and to DPI asking them to give you the job because you had done such a phenomenal job with us, you know, the corporate and the educational groups, bringing us together, keeping us on track, you know, innovating ideas about how we can improve the outcomes, especially for Black and brown youth. I still feel exactly that same way, that the work you do is admirable and your compassion and commitment to it are just simply just amazing. And I am so glad that I can count you in my circle of people. And I always know if I want to know something, I know who to call. So that's been very, very helpful.
That means more than you know to hear. I had no idea about the letter, but thank you. Thank you so
if much. I can find it, I'll send it to you. It's a few years ago now, but if I can find it, I'll send it to you. Send you all 3 copies. But so working with Black and brown populations, what is the biggest issue you see for those communities in the academic space?
Issue I see in working with those communities. Sorry if I pause for a minute. It's a big question.
It certainly is, and if you don't feel comfortable answering it, we can skip it.
Oh no, I am comfortable. Let's see. Well, I guess I'll start with, so in my role, I coordinate corporate partnerships, you know, for the school district and help to coordinate work-based learning. And I don't know if I'll say that this is the biggest issue, but this is one that's like fresh on my mind, is that when companies make opportunities available, such as internships and other opportunities for students to get experience in their companies, sometimes they, and I think it's, you know, inadvertent, put certain criteria, you know, on that participation that prohibits Black and brown students from participating. Some of those things, unfortunately, you know, are things like attendance, having like really high attendance, having a certain GPA requirement. Sometimes there's an interview that happens, and it could be that Black and brown students, because of historic racism and current racism and other systemic factors, their family life or whatever it may be, they may not be as comfortable or as confident in interviews. And so what happens is in education is what we call creaming, where organizations go in and they cream like the people that are already doing well or already privileged, and they take them off the top, and then they continue to give them more experiences. Mm-hmm. And I see that happening pretty regularly, and I try to encourage companies to think about that, that because a lot of companies actually really do want to provide experiences that help to lift up students that otherwise, may not have that experience, but they don't realize that by putting these criteria in place that they're, inadvertently eliminating certain students from having those experiences. So I try to talk to them about that. And there's another layer to it though that can be tricky, because sometimes you have to put extra supports in place to support students who don't have as much experience in the workplace, or maybe who don't have extra support at home, helping them to learn what professional behavior might look like, just from the way that you communicate, and making eye contact, or just making sure that you're not on your phone all the time while you're at work. So, and this goes for any young person, but so employers need to understand that they may need to put extra supports in place if they really are wanting to serve underrepresented students.
That makes perfectly good sense to me. So let me ask you a question that you may or may not know the answer to. What's the racial makeup in Durham Public Schools, student by ethnicity and gender, and then faculty teachers by ethnicity and gender? Do you know?
Ooh, so I hope that I don't misspeak. If I remember correctly, I think it's 50% African American in Durham Public Schools, 30% Hispanic, and then 20% other. And I actually don't know the makeup of teachers. Yeah, I don't actually know that statistic.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was very helpful. So what is it that well, let me start the other way. What did you think about what happened to Mr. Floyd? What did you individually think about that, if you've seen the video?
So I feel a little bad saying that I chose not to watch the video. I heard in detail, from just all of the news coverage and what other people have said about it. And also my friends and family who watched it told me in detail what happened. I felt like, you really should watch it, because, it's something that you should see, that we all should see and know what's happening. But I think there's a part of me, if I'm honest, that I was worried that I just might never be able to get that image out of my mind, watching somebody be killed like that. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We can stop if you want to stop. You want to stop?
No, it's okay. So I felt, and still do, clearly, a lot of grief about what happened to George Floyd, and the racial violence in the past, and that continues now. I think like a lot of people, people that I've spoken to, like you have the whole, there's so many emotions, that it took a while to process. And I think a lot of us are still processing that.
Absolutely right. I'm sorry if I caused you emotional pain. I really didn't mean to by asking you that question. So please forgive me for that.
Oh no. And actually I apologize. I hope that this is appropriate to say, but I try to be able to speak really openly about race. I've been trying to learn, continue to learn more and more about racial equity and white privilege. And I was, exposed to the term white tears, the other day, and I hadn't heard that before. It brought to my attention, how white people's emotions around race and the way that they express those emotions often, take the focus away from the people of color, who are trying to have their voices heard. So I've actually been really trying, and I know that it's probably a little bit of a different thing that they're referring to, but I'm actually trying, not to call attention to myself. So I apologize.
Oh, that's quite all right. That's perfectly good understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I have a three-part question for you. Are you able to, and are your students able to recognize microaggression, passive-aggressive behavior, or straight racism? Are they able to discern that? Your committees, people like me, your students, teachers who you work with, or do you think that they're able to to actually recognize it and then either address it or raise it with someone who can address it?
I don't think that I can answer, speak directly to that question about the students, because I don't work with students very much in my work. I work mostly with companies and with DPS staff primarily. So it's very rarely that I interact directly with students. Sometimes over the summer, as you know, for the youth internship program, I might briefly, speak with them. So I'm not completely sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah.
Okay, we have about 6 minutes. It says we have 6 minutes. So I'm going to leave that 6 minutes to you. I will tell you that before this is uploaded, I'll send you a copy of the recording if you need it, so you can look at it. And if you want me to edit out something, I'll see the best that I can. I'm not the best editor for video. That's not my strong suit. But I will see if I can edit it out. And I'll ask for your approval before it's uploaded. And then when we finish this conversation, I'll turn the recording off, and I have a question for you that's not directly related to this, okay?
Okay, sure.
The floor is yours.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you clarify again? So you're opening it up for me to add anything or ask any questions?
Anything you want to say, or ask any question or anything you want to say. You have 5 minutes now.
Okay.
And if you don't need that time, or if you don't have anything you wish to share further, we can call it now. But I mean, I try to give people a chance to end it with their thoughts, or without me asking questions, because a lot of times my questions are coming from a place of pain and hurt. So you may have other insights than that, and I'd like you to share them if you have them.
Well, yeah, well, there's something that's on my mind, and if you are interested, I'd appreciate your thoughts on it. I've been in conversations with some white friends. Like these particular people are people that are lifelong friends, and they don't live here, and so we're interacting mostly on Facebook. And I've seen a lot of them posting things in response to what happened to George Floyd, and then the protesting and everything that's happened since then. They're posting things, around kind of that, all lives matter, kind of bringing it back to, it's not just Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. Yeah. There's some of them have been posting photos of white cops, who are, helping, they're kind of hugging a brown person, or kind of showing that, basically trying to make the case that not all cops are bad, like why are we, giving, cops such a hard time and defunding them and all this stuff right now. And, I felt like that was a place, where I could try to open up a conversation with them. And something that I put out to my friends was the fact that I don't know if they're intentionally, trying to be racist or to try to block progress toward, more equality, but that a lot of times that white people, we unintentionally are racist, that we're unintentionally racist or being a barrier. And that kind of has blown up a big conversation with some people, with some of my white friends, where they disagree, that racism is unintentional. They think that racism is a intentional act, it's hatred. And I really feel like one of the most dangerous things about racism is the fact that it's so insidious that we don't realize when we're doing it. So that's really been on my mind lately, is the danger of unintentional racism and its consequences. And I was just curious if you had any thoughts, or if you've had any conversations with people about that.
Very much. And that was one reason why I asked you the question about microaggression, passive aggressive name calling, if you will, stereotypes, and just plain out discrimination. Because I think, this is a question I asked my husband, and I'm going to introduce you to him when we finish this calling in a few minutes. But I asked my husband once, I'm in the process of writing a book. I've been trying to write now for the last 3 years. I haven't made very much progress, but I'm trying. I'm going to write that book before I die. But anyway, one of the questions I asked my husband is, can white women teach Black and brown children? It's a simple question, and he always says yes. He always says yes. And I ask him, how is that? And he'll give me some logical things that make perfectly good sense. Sort of like the thing we just said about the cops. Not all cops are bad cops, and not all white teachers are not particularly prepared to teach Black and brown children. So I understand his answer, but and this is a different time for me than it is for these children. So, and I think I've told you this story. Probably by the time my son was in 8th grade, he had lost entire interest in going to school. He only went to school for the social part of it, not for the teaching, because he didn't feel like the teachers cared about him and his well-being and whether he got the best. And my daughter told me something. My daughter graduated from Jordan in 90 something. I don't remember exactly when it was, but she graduated from Jordan. And one of the stories she told me was that, she has so much student loans and so many things because there was no counselor to help her walk through the path of what she needed to do, how to apply, how to get scholarships and things like that. So I'll answer your question like this, like racism is racism. Systematic, yes, it's been here since 1619, so we don't have to discuss that. We know that's there. Racism with white people is very different because, you hear a lot of white people say, well, my ancestors might have had slaves, but I didn't have any, so you don't deserve any reparations. So, let's move on from that conversation. Or white people are intending to show genuine empathy when they have no idea what that attempted empathy is doing to the person that they're trying to show it to, right? So, one of my friends said, I have lots of Black friends. And my first thought was, wonder what that meant, because I did not know what that meant, so my first response my first thought was to tell, I have lots of white friends, because I really didn't see the value of that statement. But I think that, in essence, white people should have conversations with each other and with Black and brown people that are uncomfortable. You should check on your Black friends, your coworkers, and just ask them how they're doing mentally, emotionally, physically. And then I think that you should do something that we all should do. Vote. Vote. I think if you see a problem, you should call it out right then instead of waiting, a week, a month, a year. My husband tells me this story about a dog. So if you spank a dog for something he did an hour ago, he doesn't know why you're spanking him now because he did that an hour ago. So, you can't delay it. You got to act on it right away. So, I kind of begin to grasp that. And when you meet my husband, you'll find an absolutely brilliant man, just truly exceptional. And I'm not just saying that just because he's my husband. He really is. Students write him love letters wherever we go out. I feel like he should be the mayor because they're Mr. Brown, Mr. Brown. I'm like, oh my God, so I have to stand aside so they can, catch up with him and go on. And some of his former students are adults now, so when he sees them, it's a wonderful thing to see how they feel. But I think that white people should start having these conversations and then requiring that there be action, right? So instead of saying, okay, well, we really understand this is a bad thing that happened, but let's do more. Let's hire and include more Black people in these conversations and brown people in these conversations. Let's pay women and Black and brown people equally. Let's hire people who can help us grow. Because I was telling someone this a little while ago, if you went to the store and bought a box of crayons and the only crayons in the box are white, you wouldn't make very much progress. You need diversity to bring forth change. And so unify, if you can, with your Black and brown sisters and brothers, your white, Black and white sisters and brothers, for the cause of equality, correcting the injustices, and advocating for people. When I told you about writing the letter, I'm advocating for you because I had such a good experience with you. It was easy to advocate for you. But I can't tell you how few people advocate for me. It's very few. And so how many people have written my boss and said, what a great job I've done? Because what I hear more times than not in my workplace is what I've done wrong more than what I've done right. So do those kinds of things. Bring about change where you are trying to help somebody get from where they are. Someone once said, white people think Black people should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. What if you don't even have boots? How are you going to pull yourself up? So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that, and you did, and you also gave me some new things to think about.
Excellent, very much. Well, thank you so much. As I said, once this is converted, I'll send it to you to review. And then if you agree, I'll upload it. If you say no or you want to do it over, just let me know and we can do it over. Okay. So I'm going to end this recording and I'm going to, we're going to have another little conversation outside of the recording. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ondrea. You know, you were absolutely adorable. Thank you.